But the first measure is one that's very close to all of our hearts, that's Senate Bill 3071, relating to the acquisition of Makai lands of Kapua and South Kona on the island of Hawaii. Requires the Department of Land and Natural Resources, in consultation with the Trust for Public Land, to engage in negotiations to acquire Makai land located in Kapua, island of Hawaii. Requires the acquisition to be funded wholly or in part by transit accommodations tax revenues. Makes an appropriation for any additional amounts required for the acquisition. As you know, members, this was one of the very last bills that Senator Kahele did sign. I think Senator Galvatero was just showing us pictures that was sent to him by his son Kai, Senator actually signing that bill in the hospital. So that is very personal. And I think all of us actually did sign that bill following his signature as well. So we did want to make sure that we had the opportunity to quickly move his message forward through the session. So with that, if we can start the testimony, we have Department of Land and Natural Resources. Chair.
Suzanne Case, Department of Land and Natural Resources, who stand in honor of testimony in support of comments and are happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Members will take testimony and then we'll have questions following that. We have the Ahumoku Advisory Committee.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ahumoku stands in strong support of this bill. You have our written testimony. I was asked by the different Ahupua'a of South Kona to just come and emphasize their support of this bill. And that is from the South Kona Moku and the Ahupua'a of Kapua, the neighboring Ahupua'a of Kaulana, Mauna, Okoi, Honolulu, Miluli'i, Ho'opuloa, and Papa in South Kona Moku, and the Ahupua'a of Keawaiki, Pohui, and Kahuku in the Ka'u Moku. I was also asked to just let you know that Senator Kahele's grandfather was born in Kapua, and that is where his family practiced and where many of the families practiced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next, we have testimony from Kai Kahele. I don't think he was able to join us today, but definitely we do know his hopes and his thoughts for this particular measure. He shared that with us personally, along with the family. Trust for Public Lands, don't know if they're present today. Testimony and support. Nature Conservancy, I guess I'll mark back there. Thank you. Tax Foundation, Tom.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Good morning. Our comments are written and are there for your consideration. The strongest comment that we have relates to the funding mechanism, which is now it's now contemplated that most of it be funded through an earmark on the TAT for what is probably going to be a one-time purchase. So we're just thinking that really doesn't make sense, because if it's a one-time hit, you can just appropriate that and then you can start anew next year if it's going to come from general fund monies anyway. If the intent is to draw upon what otherwise would be in the county share, I think somebody else would have a problem with that. But if the intent is to draw on the portion that would come from general fund anyway, it really doesn't matter, and you don't need the earmark. And if you have any questions about this, we're here. We'll be here for the whole hearing.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have testimony from Margaret Willie, Councilmember, Hawaii County District 9. Testimony in opposition. I believe this is in regard specifically also to the TAT revenue section of the measure. Okay. Let's see. We have late testimony from Connor DeMont. Please come forward.
Aloha, my name is Dimon Kana and manager of Home Manapono. And I sent in testimony that I support this bill, but I'd also like to just notify you folks that just recently, it's one of the good things about Hawaii is that we have kupuna that we can always go to for our advice and our vision going forward. And just this morning I raised this issue with kupuna, treasured kupuna that's here in Hawaii. His name is Uncle Joe Tasso, sitting over here on the side. And I said what I was doing here for this bill. And right when I mentioned it to him, he dropped a bomb on me. So I'm going to drop this bomb on you guys. And what it is he informed me that that area was used as a bombing run in a time World War II and stuff, yeah. And like Kaho'olawe. And so I would think that it wouldn't be necessary for you folks to spend money to give to somebody to buy that land when you could actually condemn the land. If it has unexploded ordinances over there, can anybody on this committee tell me if there is or isn't? Do you guys have any studies on that? Well, I looked it up with modern technology today on this iPhone over here. And I found something to verify what Uncle Joe was talking about. On November 5th, 2003, there was a draft EIS public meeting in regards to the Striker Brigade Combat Team draft EIS public meeting. And on page 30, you're going to see a testimony by another kupuna, and her name is Lehulu. And she testified that she grew up watching military South Corner bomb South Corner. Did all of you know that? We were bombed in South Corner, Kapua, South Point. What did you do about cleaning up that mess? What did you do about compensating us? So there is testimony in you folks' archives to show that there's a possibility there's unexploded ordinances there. So rather than spend taxpayer monies to purchase this land, perhaps you could exercise the government's power to condemn the land, and until we can get a study done on whether or not there's unexploded ordinances there. So I support this bill if that's what you guys gotta do, but it's possible that you may not have to spend a single taxpayer dollar if you exercise your powers to condemn the land based upon previous reports that there's unexploded ordinances there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dumont. Next, we have Brooke Lawrence. Testimony in support. Bryn Kayleen Lawrence from maybe Child and Family Services in support. Cheryl Atkins in support. Deborah Child Lawrence in support. Nick Atkins in support. Ryan Atkins, support. Woody Child in support. Anyone else here wish to testify on this measure? Okay, Uncle Joe, want to come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hello, members of the committee. I stand in non-support. I warn you right now, and for everyone that is in support of this bill, if but one person, by means of an unexploded ordinance, gets hurt, you will be responsible for that. Yes, you will. By allowing this bill to move any more forward, now that you know, back in the 60s, there were 4 people that took on the Navy to stop the bombing in Kapua. and you're listening to one of the four. Of the four people, just two people are still alive. Then it was George Shatower, who was the manager of Honolulu Macadamia Nut Farms, his wife, Margaret Shatower Parrish, who is still alive today, who just gave the land in South Kona, where the Battle of Kuamo'o took place, so that the history of Kuamo'o can come back to life again. She and I are the only two that are still alive today that took on the Navy and stopped the bombing then. It was said, and by means of the DLNR then, that the Navy would clean up the place, give it back to DLNR, and DLNR was supposed to turn it into a wilderness park. Apparently that has not happened. Ask yourself, if this bill moves any more forward, are you endangering anyone's life? Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Joe. Okay, would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Okay, members, any questions for the testifiers that we've had?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Senator Gauthier?
Thank you very
question
much.
for who?
Yeah, for Joe.
Okay, Uncle
Joe, come back up, please.
Uncle Joe,
Come
sorry.
back up, please.
Senator Gauthier has a question for you, Uncle Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, with the obvious neglect that you are proposing from DLNR, wouldn't it be more than prudent to move forward with something that would allow us to look into this? If we don't do anything, then what you suggest may happen. All of these years, nobody walked the lands of Kapua, correct?
Correct.
Is that why you would suggest that nothing has happened, right?
Correct.
So, if there is unexplored ordinance, why wouldn't we want to find out? This legislation allows us to find that out. Without legislation like this, we wouldn't be able to search. We wouldn't be able to go. These questions are good. The information that you bring forward is necessary for us to move forward. But without this legislation, we would never have known. You would never be sitting in front of us. Now we know. So are you suggesting that we go back to square one and do nothing and allow for the same historical precedent to be set, which is nothing? This allows us to look into what you're talking about. So you're saying don't go?
Senator, Makua is a very classic example of what I am talking about.
Correct?
Just this past year, 2 men were out in Makua trying to clean up the area. One of them got hurt because of an unexploded ordinance. Will you take the risk for allowing this to happen again?
Joe, are you suggesting that the author didn't know? The author of the bill, are you suggesting he didn't know? If anybody would know, the author of this bill would know, wouldn't he?
Well, what I'm saying is to stop the bill from moving forward at this time, since you are aware of this.
It's
Until
even more
such-
imperative, Joe, that we
until-
move forward on this. Even more imperative now that you've revealed what you've revealed?
Until such time that you take that study that you're talking about. I would believe that that would be more important than risking the life of any one
But a
person.
study will not happen unless we move.
That study was supposed to have been taking place back in the 60s, when the DLNR was already
This is
aware of
2016, Joe. 2016.
60 years ago.
Correct. It's time to
60
vote.
years ago.
Whether we appropriate tax monies or not, spotlight is on Kapua right now. Are you suggesting that we take the spotlight off Kapua?
No?
All right. I would suggest to you that the author of the bill is asking us to put the spotlight on Kapua.
Should the bill move forward? Okay, assure me.
Now, do me a favor. Don't threaten this committee.
No, I'm not
Okay,
threatening
you're
you,
telling
sir.
this committee,
I am not
you're telling this
threatening you,
committee
sir.
that if something
I
happens to
am
somebody in Kapua,
warning you. I am warning you, not threatening
okay,
you.
fine, because it sounded like you were threatening this committee.
No, I am not. I am warning you that if
Thank you.
one, and that was the same thing that our
Mahalo.
queen said, if one
We
drop
got
of
it.
blood be shed, all of this is for nothing.
got it.
What we'll do for both, because I know that we do want something to go, but we definitely recognize, Uncle Joe, the concerns is, in the committee report, we'll definitely note the concerns that you have for safety, and we'll make sure, and I'm sure we have Director Case sitting right here, that any kind of thing that proceeds, we know that TPL is listening in, all the partners that will be involved in all these transactions are listening in. We'll make sure that they're definitely aware of this, not just aware, but I can assure you that anything that proceeds with this, safety is paramount and first. So we'll make sure that that kind of language is included in the committee report, so that all those kinds of precautions are addressed and that will be taken care of. Director, I have that assurance, right? Because I assure you, for the safety of the people who will be doing all the surveying and whatnot, working on this project, they want to make sure of that as well. So we will include that in the committee report, and she's right here. If you want to add anything to maybe just help
If I may,
alleviate the situation.
Yes, if I may, we did note in our testimony the potential for unexploded ordnance in areas near Mauna Kea. My understanding is that that this bombing did happen mostly focused on Mauna Kea. That is a natural area reserve. It is something that we incorporate, a threat that we incorporate into our management plan. And so we are aware of it, but it's mainly on the Mauna Kea parcel,
Okay.
but not exclusively, probably. Who
Okay.
knows?
All right. So we'll definitely make sure that that's included as well. But thank you,
Thank you.
Director. So Uncle Joe, we'll make sure that's included, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Senator Chan Oakland.
Thank you. Uncle Joe, can you please stay there? And Suzanne as well. When I got to the Capitol this morning, I had seen Uncle Joe and Auntie June, and I said hello. They were not here to testify on this bill. It just so happened that Damon and his wife was with Uncle Joe, and we started to talk story. They were here for this bill, and I was explaining to Uncle Joe that they were here for Kapua, and I asked Uncle Joe about, well, he shared with me that he was one of the 4 people that had helped stop the bombing. So I said it would be good for him to share with Dumont what the history of the land was. I wanted to ask Suzanne, I guess the bill says acquisition of Makai lands of Kapua. My suggestion maybe to the chair is, can this bill be modified such that there would be some kind of study done, just knowing that he was there, to make sure that we understand completely the history of the unexploded ordnance, and then not necessarily authorize the acquisition in this bill as we're moving forward until we understand that better. So at least the bill would still be alive, but it would give greater intention. I know you suggested the committee report reflect it, but I think it indicates, if we pass it as it is now, that we are set on purchasing it.
I have
So I
some
think for
comments,
the-
but I think Senator English
Yeah.
wanted to make some statements.
Well, yeah, this discussion, I just want to say a couple of things. The first is that, in the negotiations for the purchase or exchange of this property, these are the items that determine value. And these are the things that will come up and will lower value, frankly, because of the unexploded ordinances and the fact that the current owners have not taken care of that. But, I have to say that if we followed your theory, Hawaii would not have got Kaho'olawe back, Uncle Joe, if we follow the theory that you put forward here. So you have to think it through very carefully. that we have lands that we have to take back in whatever condition they are because they're important lands. And yes, there may be unexploded ordinances, and yes, we'll have to deal with it. But the current owners will have to deal with that in their negotiations and the valuations of the property. And that becomes something that we negotiate, the executive does, Suzanne does, to determine what's called fair market value. Even if it was condemned, if it was suggested earlier, you understand that condemnation means that we pay fair market value. So we will be using taxpayer monies if we follow your theory as well. So, you know, I think that that's the thing that we have to understand, is that these are all factors that come into it. But to put it into the bill at this point, I think would be counterproductive to us trying to acquire the fee in the property, but we do know that it has to be done. Because if you predicate it on a study, then it's 3 years later when the study's done, etc. So there's other ways to do it. That's just my suggestion.
If I could just add, too, that's the normal part of due diligence in an acquisition, and we have provided in our testimony comments about due diligence and the need for to include that as part of this. But it's definitely a part of normal due diligence in any acquisition.
Madam Chair, if I may,
So,
how do you equate $1, let alone $1 million, to a life? Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Joe. Members,
So-
any other questions for other testifiers? Okay. Senator, did you have other questions?
I just wanted to complete my understanding. So, Suzanne, if this bill passes as it is, can you walk me through what the process and timeline would be for this acquisition?
Okay, and Senator, we do have an SD1 as well, so you can have that line of questioning, but then we also do have a proposed SD1 that
What
will
is
be.
what is in
Or
there?
you can ask, you can continue with that
Okay.
line of questioning, but then she can also do that once we do the decision-making to follow.
Sure. Well, the normal process for an acquisition is, you know, to enter into discussions with the landowner, and assuming we have a willing landowner, or in this case, a series of
Multiple,
landowners.
yes.
The due diligence items would cover appraised value, property condition of title. All of those things would be reviewed extensively. I'm sure we'd be looking back into our files to see what studies have been done in the adjacent area with regard to unexploded ordnance. I think in this area, you know, we'd be looking to see if there was any part in the southern part of this property. But, you know, we would be looking at the cultural sites, the natural resource sites. There's incredibly valuable natural and cultural resources along this area, trails, Holua Slide, village sites. And so we would be looking at all of that and doing the appraisal, property condition, and title report as due diligence in our negotiation with the landowner.
And the time that this occurs would be what? Is it months, years?
It usually takes a couple of years to go through that process. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for testifiers? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Thank you, Uncle Joe. Okay. Members, as mentioned, we're going to go directly into decision-making for this particular measure and then move on to the other measures that we have queued up on the agenda.
Where is my voting sheet?
Oh, yeah. The beige one. As you said, this is the first hearing that we're doing DM on. So the recommendation on this measure, members, in terms of the SD1 that we are going to be considering, as you know, members, there was some concern brought up by a few of the testifiers in terms of the TAT provisions. And as you know, that was a mechanism that was used for Turtle Bay, but even that has been a little problematic as well. So we will be removing that particular provision in the SD1. At this time, we're also going to be removing the appropriation section, given that there is not a actual dollar amount or valuation for the property. You know, we're going to be waiting for them to come back with an amount that is agreed upon through the negotiation process. We're going to be basically also amending the body of the bill to make it very clear that Mackay lands, what that is in terms of the specific TMKs. We're also going to be requiring quarterly reports to the legislature so that we are kept very much abreast of the progress of the negotiations, because we want to make sure that there is due diligence in terms of work that is done on this particular transaction. And we want to make sure, actually, that the target date for agreement is the end of this year, 12/31/16. We're going to include in here that there's a process that they can continue negotiations after that point and continue the quarterly reports if it is not reached by that time. But again, the target date is the end of this year. At that particular point as well, we would like DLNR to submit proposed legislation and appropriation when that agreement is reached. But again, really putting in all those benchmarks in terms of wanting to see something done. We also have put in here, just re-clarified and made it very clear, acquiring and acquisition in terms of the kinds of real property that can be secured, as well as the fact that, let's see, go ahead and do purchase, or I think we have purchase or exchange or sale and whatnot. So we have all of that type of language that was in the bill originally. We make sure that that's kept into the SD1 as well. So we give a lot of tools to DLNR to be able to go into negotiation. And then we provide a lot of options in terms of making sure that we have monitoring as well. We've got a lot of notes on here, so did I miss anything? Oh, do you need any resources in terms of having to carry out the negotiation process or the due diligence that you need
Yes,
to do? In the
yes, due diligence costs, we would need, funding to do these studies.
Okay, how much are you anticipating that you would be requiring? I see Russell standing up, so he probably was like, wait a minute, you ain't gonna.
Let me bring my real estate expert here.
This one might, excuse me, Russell Tsuji,
Yes.
DLNR Land Division. This one might be a little bit tougher to estimate because the unexploded ordinance issue, can be very expensive, not your normal environmental check, yeah.
But in terms of doing the report and this, doing the study and the appraisal work, what would that be?
For the study, environmental study.
Doing a phase one at least.
Well, phase one, it's not very much. It's like a couple 100,000 max, But when, this issue came up in Turtle Bay too, about the potential of a thorough examination, and it can run into close to $1 million. Yeah, so that's.
So I guess the point is to do the basic due diligence. It would cost a couple $100,000, and then if there shown to be a higher level of concern, we'd have to think about how to deal with that. And
At what point might you run into those particular?
For this one, I think if we just maybe get $500,000, and that should be more than enough to do a lot of the basic
work.
due
And then if
diligence. Whether we can do it by December 31st, it's really
And
gonna
then
be
by
tough.
December 31st, you may see if you need other additional
Yes.
resources.
Yeah.
Because you.
that would be what we would aim for.
Could we use that date to see whether the
Target date for
the seller having an interest to sell?
Yeah.
subject
Target
to
date for
certain
discussions with the landowner and due diligence.
and
Okay.
fair market value.
Okay, so $500,000.
That'd be good.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll include in here some $500,000 at this particular time to do the due diligence work.
With the
required.
understanding that it's kind of like a basic environmental study.
Right,
it's
and
not-
again, you'll be required to do
We will-
quarterly
we will report
reports
to
in
you
terms of the
quarterly.
status of the negotiations, which will
Yeah.
include those kinds of efforts. And in those particular reports, you should include, resources that were expended, additional work that you're anticipating, so that we'll at the same time be seeing the status and also be aware of future ongoing work that will be required. So, will also be kept abreast of those particulars.
The value, I just wanted to point out that, the prior appraisal that was done back in '07, and even the one we're doing, which we started up right now, we're trying to contract one right now, they're going to be assuming it's clean, so that's a big assumption. I mean,
Right. Okay. Jerry? Question?
Yes. Okay, thank you. So having said that, when you look at the feasibility, you will be looking at all the 4 ownerships then? The 4 parcels?
Yep.
So would you do it all at the same time, or you look at picking one at, negotiate one at a time? How would you think you would proceed? Because, there's 4 different entities.
yeah.
So let's say if...
I believe there's 3.
Three.
One holds 2 parcels, I believe is how it's
Yeah,
structured.
okay.
So yes, we would be looking to talk to all of them.
To get an idea more or
Yeah.
less if they're
Yeah.
willing to sell.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what happens if only 2 decide to open up for discussions with the state? Then, and the others wouldn't. I think we would also like to see, at least look at those because who
Sure.
are willing to
Sure.
sell, move in
Right.
that direction, I would think. First, at least you have an idea, and then maybe you would know how to proceed or whatever.
All right, and we can include that in our quarterly report.
Right, so we'll be
Okay.
seeing we'll be seeing the quarterly reports, and if we see any, also, anything missing in terms of data points, and that's also something that we can request of the department's office, if you notice anything that you would want to see. Again, we don't want to have them present information that might hinder the negotiations either,
Exactly.
but nonetheless, I think
Yes.
what the hope is that we just want to make sure that we're continually updated so that we can make sure that there's a lot of due diligence taking place on this
Yeah,
particular.
and we
effort.
will front-load it as much as we can.
Just to note, I think prior attempts to talk with the owner, the parties are so far apart in price that I think that's why it ended. I think that's why it ended.
But we'll be updating it all and
Okay.
see how we
Thank
can
you.
do.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so members, adding to the recommendations I previously said, we'll be adding an appropriation section for the work DLNR will have to do, $500,000 in general funds. And again, also in the committee report, noting the concerns of the potential for unexploded ordinances on the particular properties and making sure that that is factored into all of the due diligence work that the department and all parties that will be engaging in the efforts, that they'll account for that as well. Okay, and so with that, any comments or statements, members, before we go ahead and take the vote? Okay, Senator?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't clear whether you are still taking it out of the TAT.
No, the TT has been removed.
Okay.
Yes.
And-
So at this point, there's no specific appropriation for the cost of acquisition amount because there is no cost for the land that they have agreed upon this particular point. But we do want DLNR and TPL to engage in actively negotiation for the acquisition of the particular properties and come back to us with that negotiated amount. But right now, as Russell said, they're far apart in terms of previously, and right now there's no agreed upon amount, so we couldn't put an amount in.
Okay.
Okay?
And then I guess I just want to.
No, we're in decision-making, Uncle Joe, right now, so, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm going to be supporting the chair fully, but I do feel a little uncomfortable about. I guess I appreciate that it's being expedited, but I think that it seems as if we've missed like Water Land Committee that would normally deal with it.
We talked to the chairs about
And
waiving
I'm sure
the
it's okay.
jurisdiction, and that's why they all agreed to send it straight here. So each chair was consulted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, in fact, it was going to tourism as well as water, land, and both waived off. And that's why we're having a hearing at Ways and Means. Okay? Any other comments or statements before we take the vote, members? Okay. If not, Vice Chair?
As for amendments, Chitakura,
Aye.
Vice Chair Putzai, Senator Chanopin,
Aye.
Senator English,
Aye.
Senator Galateria,
Good.
Senator Harimoto,
Aye.
Senator Inouye,
Aye.
Senator Revere, Senator Taniguchi,
Aye.
Senator Mackay,
Yes.
Senator Snow.
Aye.
Recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much, members. We have our first bill. All right. We'll just take a minute for individuals to